It's always a privilege to get up and speak in this House on behalf of the constituents of Saskatoon West. Nearly 6 months ago, we had an election call, and the Liberal Party leader said this was the most important election since World War II. It's taken him months to swear in his cabinet and recall Parliament. It's been 69 days since the throne speech, and MPs are still here in this House debating that very first item of business on the government's agenda. And just some context, we had the election, we had Thanksgiving, Remembrance Day, Christmas, New Year's, and now it's February, and we're still talking about this. And I would suggest that this government is tired. It's struggling to get anything done. And fair enough, it's been difficult with COVID for all these months, but this is exactly when our leaders need to step up and provide that inspiring leadership. This is when we need to lead. With this in mind, there's two main things that I want to discuss today. One are the trucker convoy protests, and secondly, the situation in the Ukraine. Now, you can't help but notice the protests that are going on outside here today. And if you're listening to the Liberals, the NDP, or the media, you would think that Ottawa was under attack by these protesters. The NDP leader said, quote, "I'm concerned by extremist elements that are spreading misinformation and attempting to turn the convoy into a version of the terrorist attacks on the U.S. Capitol," end quote. I think the leader of the NDP needs to be concerned about his own spreading of misinformation. Truth is, this was all started by our hardworking truckers, tired of COVID restrictions. And if you spent any time among them, you would have seen tens of thousands of people of all races, colors, genders, sexual orientations, languages, protesting vaccine mandates peacefully. You would see families, including young children, either joining in the protest or encouraging them on. Now, we also saw a few bad seeds joining in, and this is common for any public protest these days. Look at any Black Lives Matter event and you'll see a few troublemakers. And in Canada, we've seen troublemakers knock the head off of Queen Victoria's statue in Manitoba, tear down Sir John A. in Montreal, and put flags on Terry Fox here. And we in this room condemn all of that. And of course, I condemn anyone promoting hate speech or hate symbols in this protest. But I've also seen in this protest people picking up garbage, people cleaning up, people praying at the tomb of the unknown soldier. These are stories that the media fails to report. Listen, I'm not saying that I agree with everything they're protesting about, not at all. But when such a large group of Canadians takes time off work and spends their hard-earned money to come to Ottawa, we have to hear them out. We have to listen to what they are saying. And I'm calling on all of us politicians to meet with these folks, listen to what they have to say, even if you don't agree with them. They deserve to be heard. And I'm asking the Prime Minister to talk with these folks. Don't be afraid of them. Don't hide. Go and actually talk to them. You might be surprised with what they say. If you talk to them, you'll find normal, hard-working people, tired of COVID. They want an end to lockdowns, vaccine mandates, and disruptions. Now, regarding the vaccine mandate for truckers specifically, what they're asking for is very similar to what Conservatives have been saying since last summer. First, we've been encouraging people to get vaccinated. Next, we've been encouraging employers to make accommodations for those people who don't want to get vaccinated. Specifically for truckers, our leader has been calling for measures to accommodate truckers since before Christmas. But there's something else deeper here. It's the thing causing tens of thousands of Canadians to honk their horns in support of the truckers. It's at the root of this whole thing. People are tired of lockdowns. On this, I believe the protesters share the feelings of a great many Canadians. The question in a nutshell is, how do we get back to normal? Now, I've always supported and encouraged vaccinations, and a great many of these protesters are vaccinated. In fact, we know that about 90% of truckers in Canada are vaccinated. But Canadians are tired. The government actions so far have had undesired side effects. There's tremendous division in our country. Good luck if you're on a surgery waiting list right now. Loneliness and mental health have brought much despair to people, causing suicides to go up. In short, we're giving up on all the things that give us life. And it's been 2 years. We're into the umpteenth variant, and thankfully they're getting less deadly as we move forward. And people just want to know, where do we go from here? Now, on vaccinations, Canada's stated goal is to achieve 80% of adults vaccinated for diseases like the flu. And COVID is no different. And here's the good news. We're there. Canada has greater than 80% of our population vaccinated. We're among the highest in the world. The Prime Minister last July, he said, quote, "The country should be aiming to get more than 80% of the eligible population vaccinated if we're going to be safe," end quote. We're there. We've achieved our goal. Let's celebrate and start working to dismantle some of the restrictions. Now let's look at Saskatchewan. We've taken a less lockdown approach here. We've had no restrictions on restaurants and no gathering limits for the past few months. And rather than government restrictions, what we've done is empowered our people to do their own rapid tests and then make their own decisions about whether to gather or not. The result of this is that COVID in Saskatchewan is the same or a bit better than everywhere else in Canada. In our experience, strict government regulations and restrictions are not a factor in the results. In fact, more loosening is coming to Saskatchewan very soon. The Premier has said that Saskatchewan will be ending our proof of vaccination policy in the very near future. Why is that? Because the policy has achieved the goal it set out to do. We have successfully gotten people vaccinated. So, back to the truckers' protest. They want to know when this is going to end. They want to know that all this sacrifice has been leading somewhere. And many scientists now agree that we need to learn to live with COVID. That's what the truckers are asking for. And most Canadians would agree. Let's find a way back to a new normal. Instead of creating division, it's time for our leaders to step up and lead. Now on Ukraine, Canada's overseas foreign relations are also looking very tired. Once a trusted ally and reliable partner, the Liberals have reduced Canada to a bit player with little to offer our allies. And now we're facing something we haven't since World War II. We're moving from peace to the prospect of war in Europe. Our allies in Ukraine are asking us for help. And we're offering hollow words, gestures, and hashtags when our friends and allies are asking for much more. Now, there's a significant Ukrainian diaspora in Saskatchewan. Over 16% of Saskatchewan's population is of Ukrainian origin. Canada has the third largest ethnic Ukrainian population on the planet. And I grew up in Yorkton, Saskatchewan, which had a very large Ukrainian population. And community get-togethers as a kid always involved awesome food like borscht, pierogies, cabbage rolls. And of course, in Saskatchewan, we're very proud of our Governor General, Raina Tishin, from Ukrainian heritage. Conservatives are fully supportive of Ukrainians throughout Canada and the democratically elected government of Ukraine. We stand with Ukraine. In my riding of Saskatoon West, the Ukrainian community has reached out to me. On Sunday, Martin Zip, president of the All Saints Ukrainian Orthodox Brotherhood, wrote me as follows. We call on you to support accelerating a NATO membership action plan for Ukraine, increasing sanctions on Russia, ensuring that the Nord Stream 2 pipeline never becomes operational, increasing the provision of military equipment and defensive weapons to Ukraine, extending and expanding Operation Unifier. Well, after us pushing the issue, the Liberals finally agreed to extend the training mission Unifier by 3 years. And they also provided a $120 million loan. But this fails very short of what our friends actually asked for. What about the other requests? Conservatives are calling for providing lethal defensive weapons to Ukraine. The Ukrainians are facing a much larger, much better equipped Russian army right on their doorstep. In their hour of need, they're begging their allies for support and equipment. Other nations have answered the call. The US, the UK, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Czech Republic, they're all there. Where's Canada? We're sending tweets. We also need to restore RadarSat imaging that was previously provided when we were in government. This is a key intelligence information that is world-class. It's a very simple thing that we can do to help our friends in their hour of need. Now, what about the request for sanctions? Sanctions on American and European goods and services technology could do significant damage to the Russian economy. We could remove Russia from the SWIFT banking system. We could impose Magnitsky sanctions on the individuals holding the wealth of Putin and other Russian leaders. This would freeze their assets outside of Russia. Our tired Liberal government needs to step up and help our friend in their time of need. I long for the days when Canada was a real leader on the world stage. I remember when Prime Minister Harper looked Putin in the eye and said, "Get out of Ukraine." Today, Canada is missing in action. So, Ukraine across the planet, truckers here at home, what do they have in common? A tired Liberal NDP government in Ottawa that's run out of ideas. The throne speech said, quote, "Canada must stand up on the pressing challenges of our time," end quote. Nearly 6 months of pressing challenges. Truckers, Ukraine, inflation, housing crisis. Very little engagement, very little action. This is a tired government intent on creating division rather than leading. It's time for us to step up and lead. It's time for the last and final chapter of the COVID era. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments?
The Honourable Member for Scarborough-Guildwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the Honourable Member for his speech. He asked the question of when will it end. I think that's a live question for all of us, truckers and non-truckers alike. When will it end? Does he actually think that there is an answer to when COVID will end? We've had, 3, 4 waves of COVID, and who knows, maybe tomorrow there's another one coming. First question is, why does he actually think that that's an answerable question? The second question is, why is it that the focus of the complaints by the truckers is here? The mandates for masks, the mandates for distancing, et cetera, in Ontario are largely done at the Queen's Park. And yet I don't see any protests there, which is where the large, as I understand their complaints, the large bulk of their complaints comes from. So if he could answer those two questions, I'd appreciate it.
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Well, the protest that you saw in Toronto was about denouncing Israel, and unfortunately we never saw anything about that on the news because that's not apparently important to our media. But the real question, I guess, is will this end, and is it possible to make this end? I would submit to you that large problems require creative solutions. And if we do nothing, then the member is exactly right. This will never end. We'll just keep in this cycle of a variant and a lockdown and a variant and a lockdown. And that's what I'm calling on. That's what I think the truckers, and I think that's what all Canadians want, is they want us as leaders to show some creativity, to show some different ways of attacking this problem. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting the same result, defined as insanity, right? So we need to try different things, and yes, I think we can conquer this, and I think we can find a way to live with whatever COVID looks like going into the future and normalize it and get on with our lives and start living again.
Question et commentaire, l'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Drummond. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for his speech. In his speech, I heard him say that people were fed up and that people were protesting. He did as well on the Hill over the past week. Many Canadians also share those feelings in terms of the health measures that are weighing on our activities and lifestyles. And I am well aware, Mr. Speaker, that many of our fellow Canadians are looking forward to seeing these measures end. But I'd like to ask my colleague if he's been in a hospital or a long-term care home or in a health centre in general to measure the state of the troops. What state is the personnel in and the shortages they're seeing there? These people are exhausted, and they're asking for us to maintain health measures so we can get through this crisis. We're going to need our healthcare personnel after the crisis, so we have to look at this now. I'd like to hear what he has to say about that.
Saskatoon West.
I thank my colleague for the question. It's a great question, and there is no question that our healthcare workers and our healthcare providers in our country deserve medals of honor. They've been working extremely hard, and all of us in this House, I think, would salute them. And I think what it's really shown is that we have a deficiency of healthcare in our country. We don't have a large enough, our budgets need to get higher in this area because we do not have enough resources. Our hospitals are overtaxed at the best of times, and our care homes need help. I mean, all of these things have come to light because of COVID. So I believe that we need to work harder. We need to thank our healthcare workers. We need more of them, and we need more resources in the healthcare field. Thanks.
Time for another quick question. The Honourable Member for Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke.
And I must say I was disturbed by the remarks from the member for Saskatoon West. I just want to cite some figures here from yesterday. The total number of confirmed cases of COVID in British Columbia, 324,615. New cases yesterday, 4,075. Total deaths, 2,616. Hospitalized cases, 1,048. Intensive care, 138. So the member acts as if COVID is gone, and then we can simply give up following public health care advice and give in to the pressure group, which represents a tiny minority of truckers. Does he really believe we can get out of this COVID pandemic without following public health measures?
Yeah, here. The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West, very short answer.
First of all, I'm not saying that we should not follow public health measures, but I'm giving you a perspective from Saskatchewan. We've taken a bit of a different approach. We've had less lockdowns, less restrictions, and the results have been similar. So there are ways that we can manage through this using our creativity, and we can do this.
Continuing debate, the honourable member for Scarborough-Guildwood, and we'll try to get the